Hey, y'all. I want to use what's happening right now in the ES to illustrate some of what we were talking about with the four C's and the discussion on continuity um, because of the way that this action is developing. So let's zoom all the way out to the yearly for illustrative purposes, and we can see that on the yearly, we're green, okay, and we're above the open. Okay, so they're buying it this year. Let's go to the quarterly, same thing. That's a little hard to see, but there it is. Monthly, because we already know that they're buying it this month, they're buying it this year. Monthly, now this is a new month that we opened, and you can see uh, they're buying it they're buying it right now in the monthly. And let's zoom into the weekly. Is the weekly candle green? Yes. Even though last week we were moving down, we started out as an inside week and now we're going up. Okay, so all the way down to the weekly, we have continuity. Let's look at the daily. Down to the daily, we have continuity. So they're buying it right now. They're buying it today, right? They're buying it today. They're buying it this week, this month, this quarter, this year. Continuity. Everything is green. Everything is above the open. Okay. Let's zoom in now on the hourly. This is where it gets interesting. Okay, so we open here. We gapped up. It was an actionable signal above the high of the hammer that we made, which touched this part of the bottoming formation here. And it was in force as long as it was in force as long as we stayed above. It's been in force this whole time. But we had continuity as long as we stayed above the open on the hourly. Okay. And then that continued for another 1, 2, 3 hours. And then there was, and I'm sorry I don't have the numbers here, but then we had this 2 up inside bar that was in conflict, and then 2 down. So this is starting to look like what could be a reversal on the 60s. So here's where the four C's come into play. We answer the question, where is the next 2? Okay, so right now we're at 2 down, even though we're green. But because we're green, it's a little early in the hour to tell, and so we're going to have to wait a little bit and let this action play out. But if this keeps going up, the next 2 it might not be a 2 at all. It might be a 3 now, or it could be a 2 a minute from now. But we'll wait. We'll have to wait to see how that plays out, right? Because it's still a little early. It's still a little too soon to tell where the next 2 is on the hourly. So let's zoom in a little more and see where the next 2 is on the 30. All right, and as we can see, when we opened, right at the open, we had that same signal. So it was the same on all the time frames, except it wasn't a hammer. It was, if you add these candles up, it was a hammer. But that same signal, and then we had all of these 2 ups, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up. Looks like that might have been a 3, or maybe not. Then 2 up, and that same pattern plays out, except here instead of being a 2-1-2 reversal, it's a 2 up that goes into conflict, 2 down. And you can barely see that it is a 2 up. It did take out the high. So it's a 2 up in conflict, 2 down. So let's zoom in now a little closer on the 15ers. And you can see that from the time we opened, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up in conflict, but 3, 1, 2 up continuation, 2 up, 2 up, 2 up. So there's no reason to get out anywhere down to the 50s so far, to the 15s so far. And this reversal looks pretty similar here. I'm not sure if this is you can always tell when in doubt. Zoom. We can see that we did do a 2-2 reversal on the 15ers as well, and a measured move. It looks, no, it wasn't inside, but close. So if we were looking for where is the next 2 on the hourly, this has already been happening since the beginning of, let's see, when is this? This is at 2015. So this started happening early. So we could have actually anticipated it and possibly traded this on the 15er or waited for the 30-minute signal. Many of these signals are the same. Let's compare the signals on the 15-minute signal, which, as you can see by these red candles here, which we didn't have a minute ago on the other time frames, is going to give you a few more fake outs or false signals or whatever. But it's still confirming the signals on the higher time frames. There was no change in continuity or anything. So that's that's where you would have taken the trade if you were using the 15ers, anticipating where is the next two on the hour. So let's see if that would have been where that would have been on the 30. Close. A little sooner than you would have if you were using the 30s, because the 30 signal is there, right? We're waiting for the breakout of the low. And so these signals are triggering, it's kind of a cascade of signals. First one, then another, then another. Let's look at where it happens on the hour. And on the hour, it would have been right there. So this is why we need to always think, where is the next two on the hour? And start there and work backward and see if we can identify places where a change in continuity is going to, on a lower time frame, conflict on a lower time frame is going to result in a change in continuity on a higher time frame. It looked like at the beginning it had the makings of that's what was going to happen, but we're starting to see some corrective activity here. We'll see if this continues and takes out that high and continues to confirm the signal to the upside, or if this is just more triangles and corrective activity. And this is where I like to bring in these overlays, because I'm seeing the same action, except that instead of candles, I see the areas for each time frame. So those are the area, that's the area for the 1 hour, where from here to here is 1 hour, and that's the high and that's the low of the hour. So now you see that the 1 hour blocks, two up, two up, two up, two down. So we're expecting that two down, which did happen here, right? And then if we look at the 30s, same thing. There's the 30s, there's the 15ers, and there's the 5-minute candles. So this way I can see, it's like I can look into the guts of the thing and see how close are we to going to down on this higher time frame, like this 15er right here, that was in conflict the entire time, almost went two down, and then did this whole 2-1-2 continuation up back into full time frame continuity. Well, full time frame continuity starts right there, because at that moment that was the highest open. So 2-1-2 back through previous range, again broadening formation triangle working its way out, and then into full time frame continuity with the 2-1 doji, by the way, because it's white, 2 continuation to the upside. There's your magnitude. And did it play out? Sure did, with a couple of little areas of conflict, but always continuing to look like the next two on the 15ers and the next two on the 30s and the next two on the 60s was going to be going up, until we get to this area here where we start to have another triangle, some consolidation, and then we see what looks like the beginning of a major reversal. And it played out starting in the smaller time frames, where we see the 5s right there go 2 up, 2 down in conflict, 2 up, would have been continuity, would have confirmed, and we were looking for that 2. Didn't break the high of the previous hour, did not go 2 up at that time on the hour, okay? Went back, went into, now we have a decoupling. Actually, no, because it opened at the exact same level as the previous day, but went into full time frame continuity to the downside. 2 up, 2 down. So the 2 down reversal on the 5ers is there. And if you were waiting for full time frame continuity to the downside, you'd wait for that. And if you're waiting for the signal on the 15ers, that would be your entry. Okay. And would you get stopped out if you're using the 15ers as the trigger, expecting the next 2 on the 1 hour? If you put your stop above the high of this 15er, you would not have right there. because this candle never made it that high. So this is why we have confirming signals, 2 up, 2 down into full time frame continuity. Confirmed. So that would have been a little painful. We would have had to watch that, but 2 up, 2 down into full time frame continuity confirms the move to the downside. 2 down, 1, 2 down momentum. There's your Momo. There's a doji, so I'm not sure how that candle looks on that time frame, but there, there it goes. 2, 1, 2 down, 2, and now this is actually red. Is it? Yeah, this candle is red. It doesn't look like it because it's kind of obliterated behind the other time frames, but you can see it's got the red line. It closed below, so that's still a red. 2 down, 2 down, 2 down, 2 up reversal. Are we going to take out the half hour? Are we closer to going 2 up on the next half hour? It looks like we are. So does that confirm or does that change continuity on the higher time frames? And in this case, we're looking at the hours. So the higher time frames we're talking about are the daily, the weekly, the monthly. It would confirm full time frame continuity to the upside, right? So here we have a 2, 1. We're waiting for a 2 continuation to the upside to see if my thesis is correct. And at that point, we're already so far up along this range. We suspect that this 2 is a potential 3 on the hour, and it certainly seems like it has enough time for that to play out. Or this might be a bona fide change in direction, and we're going to find out in a minute when this breaks to the downside. So do I know what's going to happen? No. But at all times, I'm thinking, where is the next 2? How far along are we within each time frame? And whether or not we have continuity or conflict, and whether or not that conflict is going to result in a change in continuity on the higher time frames, or if it's going to possibly, like what looks like might happen, resolve back into full time frame continuity, which would be an excellent place to either add if you had the gumption to stick with it throughout all of this, or there it is, or possibly take the trade. Like if you had been here in this trade this whole time and you start to see this reversal stuff here, and you go this bar, all of a sudden this 15er goes red, right? Well, actually stay green, but this 15er goes red, it goes into conflict, and you start to see all of this play out. And you decide it's a good idea to get out here. Well, as long as we can stay above this 1 right here on this, if I zoom in here, this little 1 bar right there, this little white shaded area, which is a 1 on a 5er, as long as we can stay above it, this is an actionable signal that is in force, that is confirming full time frame continuity to the upside. Now, it looks like we might go rev strat. Who knows? Because we're back inside this 1 range. Oh, there goes up again. So as long as we can continue to confirm that, this is still a really great place to enter right here with a possible stop loss, depending on how risky you want to get, maybe below the previous 1 right there. Because at that point, it goes rev strat. Now, at that point, here's an illustration of something I like to talk about. It's like a mantra. Exit the trade the moment the price action invalidates your thesis. At this point, I have a long thesis, right? And it seems to be going that way. But we're going back. We keep touching back into this consolidation range here, this 5-minute period that made that inside bar. So if price goes and takes out the low of this inside bar, this is now a rev strat to the downside. My thesis is invalid. The place to cut it is right there. And if it looks like we're going there, I mean, sometimes if it starts moving really fast, why wait till you get there? Exit the trade, right? It's going to happen. If you know it's going to happen, don't wait for it to happen. If it's already happening, save a little bit of money and cut it sooner. But again, we're going to give it a little bit of time to play out, and we're going to see whether or not we can manage to stay outside of this inside range, or are we going to go rev strat? Now, I'm not playing this right now. This is just for illustrative purposes, but I wanted to use this example to illustrate how you would always ask yourself that question: where's the next 2 on the higher time frames? And is there time frame conflict? Is there continuity? If there is conflict, is it going to result in a change in continuity on the higher time frame, or is it going to confirm, or is it just simply some reversal activity like we see here, one of these triangles playing itself out? Like if we go into these individual 1-minute candles, you see a lot more of these broadening formations playing themselves out, right? There's a higher high, and there's one high, higher, high, low, lower, low. So you see these all over the place, and they play out. And this is why you don't really want to trade the intraday timeframes. Let's go back to the 1 hour, and we're using this signal. That looks good. We see long green bars. No matter what's happening on the inside of these green bars, we're happy. We see these long green bars. As long as they're not, anywhere close to taking us out, we're happy. We don't mind these little periods of conflict. That's okay. They're going to be the triangles. They're triangle layout, the little price discovery working its way, and we stay in the trade. That continues to be the case. I think we said down to the 15ers, right? The 30s are still nice big green bars, right? That's where we start to see the first conflict is that we see on a time frame is on the 30, and then we go down to the 15. Are we still happy trading a chart that looks like this? Yeah, I think so. Let's go down to the 5. I don't know about you, but this type of action here gives me a little bit more anxiety. So this is why we're not taking these signals, 2 up, 2 down. There's a bunch more reversals happening here that aren't changing the direction of the stock, because even though there are periods where it goes into conflict, it doesn't change continuity on the higher time frame, and they only end up confirming it. So if you want to look for a place to add, maybe wait for one of these confirmation signals, but if you're looking for how to manage the trade and not get too panicky about every time price turns against you, zoom out and ask yourself whether or not these signals are still in force, whether or not the next 2 appears to confirm or change the continuity. And as we can see now, we finished making that 30. It was a hammer. This is either going to be, well, it's already broken up a bit above that level, I think already. So it did, but then it came back in. It did break. That would have been actionable if we'd stayed above it. Came back in and now is going to continue what looks like a conflict that is ultimately, if we go down far enough, going to result in a change in continuity on the higher time frame. Those conflicts that we see on the 5ers that are happening, they happen a little bit around here, but we see more of it happening here, and we see the higher time frames going red like that. The higher time frame going red there on the 15er. That's the 15er, right? And then all these 5s and everything staying underneath what is now the highest open full time frame continuity to the downside. So conflict on the higher time frame. Is that going to result in a change in continuity on the daily? All the way up here, it doesn't seem like it. But if this continues, and it certainly does look like it right here, it looks like this is now we're in conflict again, then that may be what happens. And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Where's the next 2? Is this going to result in a change in continuity on a higher time frame? And we look for the opportunities to trade it that way. We start looking for ways to get out. We start looking for ways to get in. Every decision you make trading is a personal decision you have to answer for yourself. This is all about being more certain than not being as uncertain, as Dollar Bill Stearns says in one of my favorite shows, Billions. So we want to be, we can never be totally certain, but when we start to see this action going like this, full time frame continuity to the downside, these conflicts are starting to go and change continuity on higher time frames. We have a little bit higher degree of certainty, especially if we correlate that with what we see happening in these broadening formation series. Are we at the top of a triangle, the bottom of a triangle, back through previous range? All of that is another piece of the puzzle that gives us a slightly better edge, slightly better degree of certainty when it comes to executing these trades. But at all times, we trade what we see, not what we think. So that's why we do our stops. We exit the moment the price action invalidates our thesis. And I think this has gone on long enough, so I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you have